Hey guys, it's SD, your host of the Life Picks Relationship podcast, where people with all sorts of backgrounds, challenges, and life experience show us how they make their relationship extraordinary. Hey Life Picksers, hope you're having a fantastic day and crushing whatever you're doing. I am super excited for today's episode. I mean, really excited because we've got a couple and a therapist on together. Yay, we've got another one. Yes, today's therapist is actually a psychotherapist, marriage family therapist for over 5 decades and has written a book called Awareness That Heals. You can find out way more about it and all his resources. He has a whole lot of them there at awareness.heals.org. For the past 25 years, he's also been the co-founder of the globalbridge.org, which I'm assuming you could guess from the name, is here to go and help with global change. Thank you so much, Robert Strock, for being here. I know this is going to be awesome. Now, for our couple, we've got a couple that works together on actually 3 brands, all having to do with online Pilates and really going and making it profitable. How they work together and have an extraordinary relationship, which you'll see they really, really do, is something I really, really admire. And I can't wait to see how these guys do it. You could find out more about them at Online Pilates Classes, that's ES, onlinepilatesclasses.com or profitablepilates.com. Of course, all the links will be in the show notes with everything that you need. Thank you so much, Lesley Logan and Brad Crowell. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Thank you guys for being here. I'm so excited. Let's get this party started. Actually, one more thing before we start this. I just gotta give this legal warning. It is not on-air therapy. We are just having a conversation just for you guys to learn and just have fun. So let's do this. Robert Strock, the floor is yours.
So I would love to hear from both of you briefly what you feel is most needed for you to be more fulfilled, more intimate, more connected, and say it in a way that is expressing your needs rather than complaints. You know, just to really highlight, if I could give my partner, if I could give each of you a lobotomy, a mini lobotomy, I'd move it a little bit, maybe a little gentler than a lobotomy. But if I could shift things a little bit with you, I'd have you be X, Y, or Z a little bit different in this way or that way.
I feel that we need more time away from our business, which is something that we are working on. However, I'm a more impatient with my need. So I would always like things to be sooner than later. However, I think that a lot of what we do well is that like we work so well together and we put out so much great work for our members and our clients. And we almost do it too well and that we don't take time for ourselves away from the business. And I think that if that would be like my biggest need, like if I look at all of it.
Yeah, I'd say it's fair to say that we work a lot. It's kind of, I feel like very, everything is shifted so much with COVID that our whole life revolves around what we think we need to do to keep the lights on, where there was this like strange understanding before COVID that like I can turn off at 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. or you can like set those boundaries. But then like there was this frenetic like fear that just happened, I think societally almost, of like, I got to scramble to make everything happen. So yeah, I would absolutely agree that taking time away from work to even work on our personal lives, that would be something that we need. But I think also too, maybe your question was more geared about what we need from each other. Mm-hmm. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. I mean, that qualifies, but yes.
I would just need more time with my husband on a day off.
You need more days off.
Yeah, not even more days off. Like, I really love what we do so much, and I have a lot of fun doing it. But, and I do agree. Like, I think a lot of what has happened in the recent 11 months is of not having that time together is because of COVID. Like,
there's an irony there, right? Because we're more connected at the hip than we've ever been.
Yeah.
Yet we don't feel like we have time together.
Right. So I think, what is interesting is as there's a light at the end of the tunnel of COVID, what I would need is to make sure that we are finding ways to get out of this like COVID time where we worked all the time because that's what we had to do. And we are now in the space where we can make changes and have more time away from work as things become more safe to do so.
Right.
It's interesting. I keep thinking about is the lifestyle that we had pre-COVID. We actually allowed ourselves a lot more space, even though ironically we're talking about being more together. But the space, I think, also has a lot to do with it. And I think that one of the things that brought us so close together at the beginning of our relationship was our interdependence of each other, like independence, interdependence, where like you had your friends, I had my friends, you had your thing, I had my thing, etc. And we lived our life kind of together. And then now everything is so drastically different. You don't have girls' night. I never get to go see my buddies. Like, I don't go camping nearly as much. All those kinds of things that gave us the space apart.
Yeah.
That when we would come together, we would actually appreciate that time more.
Yeah, I mean, for the people listening, we are definitely in COVID. There's no girls' night or camping because there's not because of the time that we're in. And so, yeah, I feel like those things that we did apart were so fun because it made us have like really plan out the time that we spent together and the time off from work. We like actually lined our calendars up. But given that we moved 6 months ago to a new city,
lots of life change,
and we have limited abilities of what we can do outside of our house. It's a little tricky of a time. So I feel like my needs are almost like it's like maybe I should see how things are in 6 months when like we've been vaccinated and we can travel again. And then like, do I still have this need or is it back to what we used to enjoy?
So let me interrupt here and just redirect things. The first question that is very important that comes to me is how valid is the fear? Because the connection between feelings and needs is so extraordinarily important. And that's something that anyone that's listening to needs to really see. So for example, if your fear was, you know what, we really are close to month. And so the fear is something that's very intelligent. Or if on the other hand, we easily could go for a period of time. Vaccinations are happening right now. We're actually letting the fear run us, or the fear is actually intelligent. So I'd be and then secondly, as something to think in the back of your mind is remind yourself of where you were when COVID wasn't happening. What were your issues? I mean, in other words, it sounds a bit idealized relative to non-COVID, and maybe it was ideal, but you do want to look into, okay, you mentioned impatience, did that come in when you were there before COVID? So we really want to dive deep into, well, here's the most challenging feeling for me related to you, or the most challenging need related to me and you, unless you're perfect. And I say that with a smile.
So let me just address the fear and is it valid? And then I think we can talk about each other.
Yeah.
Great.
So whether the fear is actually valid, I try not to discount feelings, I think, right? So that said, I think it's actually more of an understanding of embracing a new normal or a new, like for a lot of people, working from home is new. But for us, we've been working from home for years together. So our like tragic change in life actually wasn't that dramatic. It wasn't that drastic from that perspective. It was actually more of like a mental, like kick it into high gear shift that kind of happened because everybody around us was talking about the world's ending, the economy's collapsing, there's not going to be any money. So, I know for sure I went immediately into, we better have 6 months of road, runway just in case, who knows? Like, what if all of our members can't pay, for their bills or whatever? So is the fear real? It's perceived, I think, because we can still, even if we were operating the same way that we were before, we'd still be able to pay our bills.
Yeah, let me clarify one thing first. I'm not thinking in terms of black and white. Yeah. It's not a matter of is fear valid or not valid. It's a matter of to what degree, what the percentages are, in terms of the subtle nuance. It's not a matter of rejecting the fear or believing it's all right.
Yeah, I think like the interesting thing is that in March, we were coming back from Cambodia after leading a very unique retreat, it felt like a retreat from the actual pandemic. It felt like a retreat from the world and was a really special experience with all these people. But as we were flying home and I paid for the internet, I was paying to read email after email of 2 retreats we had to cancel, 8 countries I had to cancel, all those workshops that had to be refunded, all of those plane flights that I was not going to get refunded for. So there was actually, like, even if we had a runway, the kick into high gear was, we have a service that we can provide that helps people. And I felt this obligation to make sure that we were providing that help. Now, we charged for it, so it wasn't like it was this weird obligation where I'm like, I got to give this out. I just was like, I want to help people. I know we can. And now we have this unique time. But we did go. There was a good month in there where it wasn't like
there was a scramble.
We did not have 6 months of runway. We were losing all of our runway in the change of the world.
With the 3 brands we have, one of them literally lost all of its income overnight. And so, and that was actually our primary income the year before. Yeah. And so the other 2, there was like an absolute shift of like, all right, this one's done. We got to push these forward and go.
Yeah. And I think so, and then the shift, we were able to shift everything. And one thing that is interesting, I don't have fear today that we don't pay the bills tomorrow. Like, that's not an actual real fear, or it's a fear that I even experience. However, I do have we have a responsibility to 9 people around the world whose income relies on us actually producing what our goals are for the business. And so
we have a team now.
So we are in an interesting growth period. We went from being a couple people in March while we were funding everything and like literally looking at a blank slate of like, what are we going to do now? And I know we did a really awesome job with it. It was really fun to like recreate and have a lot of fun, but we grew and we hired people, we brought them on. And so now there's this new fear of like, well, we have all these people who are relying on us for income, and we are in new roles and we have new opportunities. So I feel like the fears are not there that we can't take the time off. It's the actual doing of the time off, because we've been in a pattern of having to work all the time. So, I think it's more of a habit rather than a fear.
Okay. So I think that's really important to highlight. The habit is probably the fear going unconscious, because the habit, why would you form a habit? When you love each other and, you get along with each other, and yes, you want to be hyper protective of all these people that you have if you have let yourself, let's just say, excessively dedicated to your profession, and you're saying it's a habit, then I think it's important. If you don't really directly own it, the habit will continue. But I think if you see that, we can definitely afford, or we can't definitely afford to take a day off a week, and being very distinct about that, and not being wishy-washy. Well, we're sort of this way, but it's a habit. And versus, we're in a habit. It's probably the fear going unconscious that who knows what could happen with COVID, the new strains could come in and we could get wiped out, and this could go on and on and on. We want to be a little extra protective. However, we know from our best selves, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, from our best selves, for us to be really in balance, we need to take X time off. So we're really in balance.
To me, it sounds like, I could be completely wrong, but you have that time off, but it doesn't have as much of that like specialness as it has had before COVID. Because then you had more, like you were saying, you had more time, you're doing separate things, and you would have to arrange your calendars to make sure that you're actually going and spending time together. Now you're doing it, but it just happens. It's not like unique, and you don't do anything to really deepen your relationship.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that. I think it's a little bit of a tricky situation. It's a little hard to make time together special. There's not we're not able to just go and do things in the world right now. So like without bringing all of your hand sanitizer, masks, you can't, you know what I mean? Like some of the things that we could make it special. I'm not saying it's not possible. I think it's just a really tricky time because it's really hard to distinguish when a night is over and when it's not, when a day is off and when it's not, when you're literally in this like interesting bubble of a time we're in. So that's the only tricky part, except for like maybe like, you know, putting on a hat and going, this is our day off hat. It gets a little bit tricky.
I do understand that it can be kept vague, but I have a life that has 6 dimensions, 6 different ways I could go at any moment. I could stay busy and do 10 weeks in 1 week. But I know my priority is not only to be loyal to my relationship, but be loyal to myself. And there's nothing, unless it's survival flat out or a deeply felt need to take care of employees. I know very well nobody is going to stop me from taking my time off. And there's not that conviction inside you where you're doing that. And it sounds a little bit vague in terms of your minds, which is probably what's allowing it to be, well, gee, can we take this night off or not? Versus, unless an emergency happens, we're taking this day off. And everybody in our network knows that.
I'd say that's fair. I come from music, and I used to dedicate writing time of like, my phone's off, don't bother me, don't call me, I'm not available, period. And that was very intentional. Whereas now it's like, it'd be really nice if we could take Saturday off and we just kind of like, oh, I got a thing I got to handle. So I'll just do that real quick. And then that's like 4 hours later. So yeah, I'd say that's fair. But I was coming back to your very original question, what do we need in our relationship? I think that intentionality is actually probably the root of it. And there's a sense of letting life happen at you and to you, as opposed to, participating in it, actually acting.
Right. I mean, I think there's 2 forces that most people in the world, whether it's you or whether it's the listener, one is success and survival. And I'm actually adding a third one, is the fear of not being able to have those first 2. And when you have those as underground drives, which we all do, maybe not underground, maybe overground, there's a tendency to fool ourselves and to think that we don't really have the time when we do. It's like, for example, health and love and friendship. I don't care unless I have to do it to survive in the world. I'm not giving up any of those. Those are my intentions. You mentioned intentionality. Those are my intentions, and you're not going to mess with me. I'm very, very clear that what are my intentions? What are my priorities? What are my core needs? What's the order? And am I following that balance? So I hear 2 messages from both of you, and I think we need to discern which one's truer. One is we have an incredibly sincere oath to take care of our whole network and ourselves, and we're in love with what we do, and we're good at it, and we've created this whole wonderful network. On the other hand, we love each other, and we haven't really had the time to nurture that love as much as we ideally would. And the question is, what's the optimal balance in terms of your intentionality, and getting concrete a little bit? And I don't mean that we're living in a dream world where emergencies don't come up, and you might say Saturday's date night, and then it turns out some emergency happens in some other part of the world, and you have to take care of it, of course. But you set up a few fail safes where you have, this is our date night. If that doesn't work out, then this is, or this is our day off, and if that doesn't work out, then this is it. And that you're very distinctive, that we are a virtually unchangeable priority unless an emergency comes. And if you were both to frame that, how would you do that? And then the second thing I'm hoping we get a chance to get into is, once you're there, what would be the limitations that you'd want to expand into? Because I can spend time, with a lover, as I suspect the two of you can, and I can think of 28 ways to be together. You don't need to go off on a trip. You don't need to, have the external support. You can lie on the couch and hold each other. You can make love. You can watch your favorite movie. You can listen to music together. You can meditate. You can take a walk. There are so many ways to be together. So you don't need to have it be an uncovid area to nurture your love. So what I'm really asking specifically is, okay, you're perfectly sane right now. You're in your wisest self. How are you going to set up these boundaries?
Well, it's really interesting. I think it's really funny. We take a walk every night together, and we eat dinner together every night, and we watch a movie or a show every night. So I think there's a lot of boundaries we do have around a lot of things. I think it's more, we're not people who, and I think we used to just explore so much outside of the house together.
I see.
And that is not, there are some possibilities there, and there's a lot that's not. So I think for this period of time we're in, and as the weather gets warmer, there's some things that I'm excited to go do in our new area, but we're pretty intentional around, it's dinner time, it's dog walking time, we play music, and, we have that, we do yoga together 2 to 3 days a week. So, there's actually, the more I think about it, we actually do spend some great quality time together. I think we could have a day off.
I think yes, we do those things, and we should take a day off. But I think also, I was listening to a podcast earlier about someone who was at breakfast with his girlfriend, and he was on his phone the whole time. And so she commented, so you came all the way here to have breakfast with your phone, not to have breakfast with me. And I started laughing because we're pretty good about that. We do make exceptions, of course, but I think it again comes back to intention, because we can take a walk together every night, and we do almost every night. Are we present in it? Are we treating it as quality time? Are we treating it as relationship time? Or are we just taking a walk with the dogs, and we're, I know I have a tendency to take our work into that meeting, because it's a time of reflection for me, and I get to think and deep process the day. And if that's what that walk is, that's okay. But we should be intentional about maybe dinner, or maybe some other time where we are actually treating it as if it's time for us to spend together.
Yeah, we can do that. I noticed you do reflect on the walks. I'm treating it as time with you.
Yeah.
My phone is on do not disturb. It's just playing music.
Yeah. But I think that point is exactly what I'm trying to get to. Is if there are subtle ways of intentionality, and I'll give you a few examples, and you guys can correct me because I don't know you well enough to say anything authoritatively. But there's a way of holding the hand where you're really holding the hand. There's a way of looking at the eyes or touching the hair, not mine because I don't have any, but touching the hair, where it's really special. You really feel the love in that presence. There's ways where you hold each other for 20 seconds when you take the walk, and it changes the whole quality of the walk. There's ways of really of saying to yourself, no, I am not going to process what we're doing during the day, because this is our time. And even if we do share it, it might be pleasurable or more accurately useful, but it still isn't really giving us the very best of our heart, which we really want to bring. And so I think isolating those details of how you are doing it when you're doing it. Because I think you were very clear when you said that we're doing these things. So then it becomes an issue of degrees of quality, and then being very specific. And again, for you and for the audience, it's like when you are looking at your needs, it's very important to keep it very specific. So, for example, if one of you likes holding hands or likes kissing or likes holding or likes lying down together for 5 minutes, that's concrete, specific needs. If you leave it as, well, we really aren't spending quality time together, it's not much different than the ocean is blue.
Yeah, it's very vague.
It's very vague. So the specificity of the needs, if you guys each said, you know what, when we take our walks, when we eat our dinner, I'd like to have a little bit more time where we're silent together, or when we're looking at each other's eyes, or we're holding hands, or we light a candle, or we have this background music, and something that really touches our heart. And if you were to give a handful of little critical details, that would be immensely helpful.
I think that's fair to say. I think it's a similar approach as like doing the boom release kind of a thing, where there's a moment of like actual reflection and like, letting go of something.
Could you isolate each of you? Because I mean, I'm listening to you. Okay, you said that in some way we're not taking, in some way, the time to optimize our very best quality. But I'm still not hearing any specifics of, I miss looking at you a little longer in the eyes, or I miss a little bit more of this, or miss a little bit more of that. I think the more specific you can be, the more likely you are to find some benefit.
I think you guys also have a little bit, in a way, it's a little more challenging to get it more specific, but it's a little bit easier that you anyways do these walks, you have dinner together, that you don't have to all of a sudden make an hour in your day. It's like you're doing it anyways. So if we just add this tiny bit additional something, it will changes the whole quality of it.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I'm thinking like, I think it's going to depend, right? If he needs the walks to be a reflection of the day, there has to be a reflection of the day somewhere. So that means that the need I have on the walk, I either need to find it in another part of the day, or I have to find time for his reflection. So it can't just be like, this is what I want on the walk, So I think I need it. Yes, we can just be more intentional with the time we already have, but I think we need to actually discuss, like, is it best for you to reflect on the walk? Or is it better for you to reflect while you're cooking dinner? Or like, I think that it can't be like, we have to figure out what works best so we can both get what we need out of the day together.
For me, sorry to interrupt you, but for me, I didn't mean to imply that one person's going to dominate the other. And I didn't mean to imply that you're never going to talk about the day.
Oh, yeah.
That's why
how do we balance our needs?
But I am saying being specific.
Yeah.
That there's a vagueness that I think right now, if you really asked yourself, and we're not cautious, throw caution to the wind and just say, here are a few of the things. And it's not even a matter of I'm setting an intention for the walk. It's more than intentions while you're walking. You may set an intention for the walk, but then, suddenly you feel something else and another intention arises. So it's more being open to the moment of saying, oh, I'd like this. How do you feel? How do we feel? How do we sort of speak from need, or desire or longing, or there's a lot of words. I don't mean need like deficiency. Yeah. I mean, like from your heart.
One thing I notice about us is that our peak operating hours are dramatically different. She functions really, really well in the morning, and I function really, really well late at night. So I think by happenstance of just the way that our brains are going, she brainstorms when I am barely awake, and then I brainstorm when she's shutting down and try to go to sleep. So it's, as far as a need, I'd say we both need time to brainstorm or to reflect or to, ideate or whatever you want to do. And I think if we were able to allow time in each other's schedules for those moments, then we could set aside the walk to be intentional about us.
Yeah. And I think that's such a common thing, that people have different rhythms of the day. And that's something that you need to be very gentle with and not impose on each other, and let the other probably mostly do the reflection internally, because otherwise you're kind of wiping the other person out if they're exhausted or they're not awake yet or whatever else. But then the alternative is, I guess we have to pick a time when neither one of us are in our zone and zoned out, and really intentionally say, you know what, if we do it on either one of our times, it's always going to be a struggle a little bit for one person. Whereas
it's a bit strange too, because we work together. So, and the reality is, I might be the CEO, but we basically we steer the ship as a team, even though I might be like executing all the things with our team, but like the conceptualization of it, I actually need your input.
Yeah.
And I also think you need mine. And so if we could find a common ground, or if we could dedicate, I think it might be best if we found that time in the middle, because then there is like we're both operating. So like lunch kind of a thing.
That's exactly right. I think it is lunch or what afternoon. But the beauty of what you're saying is that you have unlike most couples, you have such a flexibility on a given day, because you're together, to say, you know what, we don't have an emergency right now. Let's spend 20 minutes doing X, or let's spend 15 minutes doing Y. And it's actually an advantage to work with your mate when you really like each other, and you're both passionate about the same thing. But it does require a certain amount of breaking a visceral pattern of staying with the work and staying with the responsibility for your team, and then saying, "Gosh, we're here together. Let's look for those 20-minute windows every day, and maybe multiple, and recognize that this is a core. It's not only a need; it's a gift." It's a gift to be able to love each other. And then you get into the nuances of, again, specificity of need, because in that 20 minutes, one of you, and again, we're assuming this is not a time where we're using the 20 minutes to say, I still don't know how to take care of this or that. And what do you think about it? It's not that. This is our time. We're both agreeing. And what are the nuances that each of you might want to put into the play? And if you can't come up with it now during our time, let yourself contemplate what would be the real heartthrob moment for me with you if we had 5 minutes, or when we have 5 minutes.
Yeah, you asked the question earlier about what was it like before COVID, and I think actually the question is probably even goes back further, because when we first met each other, I think there was just simply a desire to carve out time to be together in a romantic or even just a friendly way, or just a conversational way. And we would sacrifice work, dinner, sleep, whatever. We would sacrifice any of the things that we would normally have been a staple in our day just to spend time together.
Well, also, we didn't used to work together.
We also did not used to work together.
We used to work for other people.
That's also very true.
And so it was a lot easier.
Yeah.
It was a lot easier. You're like, oh, it's way more fun to spend 20 minutes with you than it is to do this project over here. And then
work for someone else, never mind even for yourself.
Yeah. Right. And then we both worked for ourselves, but separately. And so then again, it was still also easier to carve out time, because it was like so nice to just take a break from like running our things. But now we work together on the same thing. So it's it's going back to just being intentional of like, no, this is the time we said we're not doing work.
And I think we did go through kind of phases, because when we first started dating, even for multiple years, we just were really excited to spend time together. It didn't matter if that was like at home alone, just talking, or if we were out doing something. But then I think we shifted towards the middle of our relationship where we were setting that time aside to go out to see a movie, or to like go do things. And then that got taken away. And I think it's interesting now to think like, okay, how now it's like we should either revert back to how we were originally or find another, avenue to dedicate to each other.
Yeah. And I think the answer is the latter, because you're in a new reality. But I think this might piss both of you off, or hopefully turn one or two of you on, preferably both of you. I think you're partially rationalizing that you don't have a choice, and more specifically, looking at what the choice is to reliably say, no, we are going to be dedicated now to creating the spaces, and here are the needs. Now, one of the things that I have done for a long time, but I formalized it in writing, where I identified 75 needs. And when you look at this list of 75 needs, there's no way in the world you're not going to find 5 that are not being activated that are important for you. But otherwise, you can talk about, well, we need time together. Okay, well,
which is also very vague.
Very, very vague in one need. And on my site awareness.heals.org, there is 75 needs that are free, that there's no charge. And if you start saying, I want to be more affectionate, I'd like to be more communicative about our sexual life. I'd like to be more holding each other. I'd like you to touch me more this way rather than that way. Then we're starting to get concrete. And the impact on the heart has to do with the subtlety of the communication of needs and then the implementing them. And it is always, as Lesley, you said, it is always a we. It's not a matter of I need this, and so I'm going to impose this on you. It's like, how do we take care of both of us is a love song. And it's something that in this precious time, you're asking, how do we take care of both of us? Which of the needs that we both have could really have us singing our song together? And so I invite you now and or in the future, or everyone that's listening, to be more specific about what it is you need. And then the other thing we haven't really talked about, because we haven't gotten into the conflicting side, is I also have 75 challenging feelings. And being able to identify the challenging feelings, like if you're afraid, you need to find some courage. If you're sad, you need to find what you need to be happy, et cetera, et cetera. And so if you can identify what the feeling, like you might be feeling empty, you might be feeling bored, you might be feeling exhausted. And you might just want to be holding each other if you're exhausted or whatever else. But the subtlety of being able to be articulate in the language of the heart and the details of the heart can be so immensely helpful, versus we need more time alone. You sort of have to be able to say, okay, let's keep working with this. What do I actually specifically want to do while we're taking our walk, while we're eating dinner? And that's fun. I mean, part of the conversation at dinner, it's fun. It's just asking yourselves that. How can we be more intimate? Just asking that question.
I mean, that's fair. I think you're right. I also think I'm a very logical person. So when you say I'm trying to rationalize it, I understand that.
I'm glad I didn't piss you off too much. Good.
No, I mean, there's no reason to get upset. I think this actually, the timing of this is really interesting because hi buddy. The timing of this is very interesting because I literally was just saying this morning how I need to see a shift in my own calendar, in my own schedule, so that I can be more effective. And I was generally implying with work, but that same thing could be another demand is not just work; it's our relationship.
Yeah, and the word I think is gift versus demand. It's like there's a obviously you like each other. obviously you love your work. Obviously you're committed to your work. And I think there's a lot of resistance to getting very, very specific about how you can actively deepen your love, because it's easy in a way to love your work and to feel more secure while you're doing that. And go ahead.
I guess I think it's a really interesting question. And the reason I'm not getting very specific is I'm kind of playing through what would that look like? Because before I require lots of time by myself. I recharge by myself, and I take a lot of time for myself. I have a 2.5-hour morning routine that is alone. and I have a night routine that is pretty much alone. And so for me, it's like, okay, so what would I want on those? Like, what does that look like? And so I'm kind of like thinking about all the different needs, and I'm not ready to actually just say, these are the ones I want, because I don't actually know. Like, I like to try to move on.
Exactly. And that's really beautiful in two ways. One is you brought up, we also have needs to be alone, differing needs, but needs to be alone. And we have needs to be together, and we have needs to be together for the work.
Yeah, I would say it's like a recharge thing where she's very much she's like a gregarious introvert. And I am like, I'm actually willing to be more of like an inverted extrovert, which is weird to say. But I used to just go be in public, just sit in a bar or sit in a coffee shop. I don't need to talk to anyone. But for me, I recharge in that setting, where she's the exact opposite. She can be out and about and the life of the party, but her recharge time is like, don't talk to me. I need to read my book and just be alone.
Yeah. So I was just thinking, like, what needs can I give myself versus what needs do I need from him? And I think that's just going to take a little bit of time, but we're not particularly people who forget questions that are unanswered. We have to answer the questions. So I feel like it'll be some food for thought. I think, it's also helpful. Like, I'm so protective of my schedule, so protective. I think it's easier for me to do that. He really does thrive off of being rebellious about his schedule, I think. So it's a little harder, because I was like, well, do you want me to help hold you accountable to something you said you want to do in the morning, or do you want it to be your choice? Because I can help, but I think that's it's so it's so interesting. What makes us also love each other so much is very opposite of how each other functions. And so what do we need together to get the needs that we can't give ourselves met is unique and something we have to figure out.
Exactly. And if you don't have a source of really looking at detailed needs, it's worth looking at the source I gave you. And also a beautiful way that if you're really, let's say, doing what you love, and you guys are, okay, that's a real gift. Then you get to see life as not problems, or even the word needs can have kind of a negative connotation. It's more ways of being close, is another way of saying it. If you see it as a hierarchy of goods, and you can see, let's say you have 75 or 50 or 20 or 10 goods that you say, these are all goods. We're not primarily looking at problems. We're looking at how do we sweeten our life. So you get to do your routine, Lesley, and you get to have your privacy. And as long as you find a way where that's not really injuring the relationship, that's absolutely one of those goods. And Brad, you get to find a way. It's harder, but maybe you need to be resourceful with Zooming more friends and having more extroverted time, or you would know better than me how you might be able to adapt during this time.
There's no doubt I've been missing that for sure.
Because it's like introvert in the extra. So Zooming other people isn't giving you what you need. You need to be by yourself in a room of...
Yeah. And it's, we get to toast with our neighbors, but it's still not it's not like that environment that was always for me, like really a fueling.
And the other thing is that the voice that says, We're doing great. And at one level, we're doing great. We're at the time of COVID. This is a time where the spousal abuse is going up, where people are being cruel to each other. We're in this conversation, we're not talking about serious problems or even problems. We're talking about how do we optimize the goodness.
Yeah.
So it's very, very important that it doesn't get pathologized into something like, oh, we're here to do and look at negative things. We're looking and saying, how do we hit more bullseyes? How do we hit more sweet spots? How do we touch each other's hearts and our own hearts more and more and more? And of course, Lesley, like you said, the idea isn't to get an answer in an hour. The idea is to contemplate on this for the rest of our life from now until we die. This is lifelong practice. None of us get it. I don't get it. I need to ask myself it every 15 minutes or every hour when I'm not absorbed in something that's very obvious. And then the other thing is to be able to ask it in a really friendly way. It's like, well, what would I really like to do right now versus what should I do? Or what's, what am I missing? It's more like, what would I really find relaxing or in sync with what I need at this very moment? Because what I need this moment is going to be different than what I need in an hour, sometimes, many times. Yeah. So it requires an attunement with internal sensations and longings. And it also requires a certain acuity to have access to a lot of different needs, because you can forget in the vagueness of, I want to take care of my needs. Which one of and 75 is arbitrary. It could be 100, it could be 50, it could be 200. But having the articulation ability to be able to say, oh, great. Like I would say to each of you, write down a hierarchy of your 20 most important needs to you individually, and then kind of rank, well, how much am I week to week? How much am I really taking care of them, and which one need a little bit more juice, a little bit more energy, a little bit more time?
I like to have that resource of the 75, needs, and the 75, the joys. I don't know how you describe it. Essential qualities, needs, elements of compassion. A lot of different ways to say it. But yeah, it's a great way to kind of get the brain going, because otherwise it becomes this like amorphous, like, I don't know what my needs are, other than food and sleep and air, right? So that's cool. And it makes sense to me to kind of shuffle them around and focus on 20. I also think that it's interesting I think it's so easy for, you kind of get into just life and a routine, and you forget the excitement that you initially may have had. And there are, of course, moments of it that come here and there, but if you're, again, intentional about it, maybe it can be more consistent and continue to help strengthen the bond that we originally made, whereas if you aren't intentional about it over time, like people just will drift apart if you're not being intentional.
Like, for example, I'd use a few different words: specific heart intentional rather than intentional. I'd use fulfilling. I'd use useful intentional. There's a lot of different types of intentions that you want to focus on at a given time. If you guys have a work problem or a work opportunity, you're going to be into useful intentional. If you really have the time alone, you're going to be body, heart, mind intentional. So intention is such a wonderful, wonderful word. When you add a couple adjectives to help zero in on
being intentional on what you're intentional about.
Exactly. And we can go 3 or 4 levels there. We can add another intention, get subtler. But the whole point is it's fun.
Yeah.
It's enjoyable. It's completing. And none of us arrive. It's not a matter of being perfect. It's a matter of having an arrow, and you say, God, I brought in a little bit more of this into our life. How cool. How does this feel to you?
Yeah.
Does it work for you? And
I think I got this figured out, babe.
Well, you guys sound really self-aware and really thinking people. constantly working and growing. So I know you'll just take this further. For our very last question, I'd like if every one of you could answer me, it would be awesome. How do you describe an extraordinary relationship without using love, connection, and for you guys, I'm going to put in intentional?
How do you define an extraordinary relationship? I have some thoughts, unless you'd like to go first.
You know what? I think you should go first.
I think you should go first too.
Thanks. I would say an extraordinary relationship includes excitement, respect. I know that Mr. Robert Strock is going to say fun. I'm stealing your word there. It's where two people can find enjoyment in each other and tackle life together, where you're both maybe not going exactly the same, but you're running parallel to each other, and you can be friends along the way, friends and lovers. That if it's a romantic relationship, that's an extraordinary relationship where you can support each other while you're both chasing your dreams. And maybe those dreams are exactly the same or they're closely aligned.
Great.
Beautiful. Yeah.
We work on ourselves alone as on our own self, and then we bring that together. And so yes, meeting each other's needs makes that relationship whole and well, but also knowing that he adds to my life and not is it. And so I hope the same, right? So I feel like he's an icing on the cake versus the other ingredients that make up the cake with me. And I think that makes it if to keep that makes the relationship extraordinary. That requires paying attention.
I love that.
I love that too. So I'll start off with something that really is similar to what you're saying. Finding the balance of autonomy and merging that's right for you, because every couple needs to have their own version of autonomy and merging. And that's commonly a difficulty. One person wants to merge a lot of the time. The other person wants a lot of their own sacred space. And nobody's right, nobody's wrong. But finding a way to balance that. And in your relationship, I'm sure that has its elements. I think it's also the extra rewards, which you guys clearly have, of passing on health and meaning to others. So you feel the joy of not only being with each other, but you're contributing to the world at the same time. That's a level of sweetness that there is no substitute for when you're actually able to give to others as a part of your way of being together. I think transparency and being utterly open with what you're experiencing is a profound key. I have one very close friend who's a little bit better at it than me, but that's what I've prided myself in my life. But she's outdone me a little bit. Is when you're not feeling good, being able to announce it before you dump it, and then not dump it, but still let yourself experience it and say, I don't want to dump it on you. I'm feeling angry. I want to find a way of letting myself feel the anger without killing you.
Mm-hmm.
So that transparency is very central. And then the other piece is being able to really have conversations of how are we going to take care of both of us, and having that be an endless love affair. People that have grown to that point, and I think you guys have, where you get to, not have to, not should, you get to ask, how do we take care of both of us? You can stay in silence. I would say a part of this is also staying in silence, being able to enjoy silence. But even when you don't come up with the answers, intimacy is happening while you're asking, how do we take care of both of us?
Yep.
I really like what you said because I actually I don't know if I ever articulated it quite as well, but I always said I felt like I met someone who didn't need me at all, right? Like when I met her, she had friends, a car, a life, a dog, a job. She ran her own business, all these things. And I was also had almost the same stuff, and we didn't necessarily need one another. Need, right? Wasn't relying on me for anything. If I wasn't in the picture, maybe it would have been lonely, or wouldn't have had the friendship that we have, but life would have gone on. And there was something really magical about being completely independent and yet going through life together in that manner.
Yeah. And finding the subtle ways to merge. And that you did a beautiful job of describing what it is to not have to work on problems primarily. Not that you're perfect, I'm sure you do in a more minor way, but primarily you get to work on how do we really sweeten the pot?
Yeah, that's so fun.
And then spread it.
Yeah.
Because your work gets to spread it.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's so cool. Thank you.
Thank you so much, both Mr. Strock and Brad and Lesley. This was amazing. I really appreciate you opening up and being vulnerable like that and letting us, all our listeners, learn from you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you enjoy that episode? Could you do me a personal favor and subscribe and leave a review? It would mean a lot to me. Thank you so much and have an awesome day.